Ethical Perspectives on the News is produced by the Interreligious Council of Linn County, which is solely responsible for its content. The views and opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of KCRG TV9.
Hi, my name is LaSheila Yates. I want to welcome you to Ethical Perspectives on the News. And this is our opportunity to look back and reflect over the last year of 2019 and figure out what are some of the lessons that were learned, opportunities, and also perspectives of growth with the team here. And so I'm just going to start off by giving my panelists an opportunity to share, what are their points that they have to reflect on, what's helped them or how they view the content here personally, but also, even kind of their roles with the organization or with the channel here. So I'm going to go ahead and give folks an opportunity to share that perspective and how they're involved. And so I'm going to go ahead and start here with Leon. If you can tell us, what you've done, your role with the organization, and also, how long you've been with us.
Sure. So I joined this. Our producer reminded us just before we started that I've been with the show now for 10 years, but I've been a moderator for the last 3 or 4. So initially, the group was looking for somebody with a point of view. Somebody found me, and I joined a couple of panels, and I enjoyed that, and then later was invited to sit in your chair, and I've enjoyed that work as well. So I teach at a local college here at Cornell College, teach computer science, but have a strong interest in these public issues. So I'm pleased with this opportunity.
Thank you. And so I'm going to have Beth go ahead and introduce herself and her role with the organization as well. And when did she come on board? When did you come on board, Beth?
Yeah, so my name is Beth Parker, and I've been with the organization probably just a little over a year. And I was originally invited as a producer by Charles Crawley, one of the founders or one of the long-term members. And it's been a great experience.
Okay.
Yeah, my name is Diehl. So I have been with the Ethical Perspectives for a little over 3 years. First came on as a panelist. And then I'm also the vice president of the Interreligious Council, which, as we know, kind of does sponsor the show. And so they had asked me to act as essentially a liaison between the Interreligious Council and Ethical Perspectives. So I became more involved, and so was asked to start moderating some of the shows, and have enjoyed it. It's a wonderful opportunity, and I'm looking forward to how we can continue to grow our audience and have an impact on our community here.
Okay, well, thank you all for sharing how you get here. I'd be interested in learning how, with the last year in 2019, what particularly are you proud of in your role with the actual show? And so, Leon, I'll start with you, and if anyone else would like to join in, I welcome the feedback.
So I did a program on how high schools in other countries differ. And we found a student at College who had gone to high school in Germany. We found one at my own Cornell College who had gone to high school in China, and another one who had gone to high school in England.
Okay.
And we compared those experiences. Over the years, I've done a number of programs with an educational theme, and hope to visit that theme again in future shows.
Okay. And with those experiences that you pretty much gathered, did you produce like some type of report? Did you use that information in the class and have, just want to know, those storytelling is important because it can lead to a better understanding of individuals and groups. So I'd like to know, what did you find and how did you share it?
This began, my college has sent me to China to teach.
Okay.
I had taken students to Germany last year as well, so I had that connection. And then I had read a terrific book by a woman named Amanda Ripley called The Smartest Kids in the World and How They Got That Way, or something like this. She spent a significant amount of time looking at schools around the world and recruited some high school students as kind of her inside agents to, they went out on, into the schools in other countries and told her what it was really like. So that reading got me started, and then of course I'm a teacher myself, and so that's how the whole project began. When I do this for my programs, I do a lot of reading. I think sometimes my producers think I do too much. I make a long list of notes for myself, and I suggest some articles to the people who join us on our panel and compose a list of questions. So there's no final report we're publishing, but I learn a lot along the way, and my panelists come with a lot of knowledge too.
Okay, excellent, thank you. And so definitely any of you can jump in.
Sure.
Open.
So I thank you for this opportunity, and I think that's one of the benefits that I feel as though I learn a lot also. And as I was preparing for this, I started reviewing some of the past sessions, and I found a lot that I liked. There were 3 that came to mind. One that I produced had nothing to do with my contribution, but we did one about vegetarianism, and I was so impressed because the panelists bought food, and they had there was food on the table, and there was food on the counter, and there was food just everywhere. And I think that they brought forth an important message about alternative eating. And another one of my favorites was about end-of-life transitions, and it was important to me because I learned about that transition, some things about that transition, and basically it made me adopt a different perspective looking at death. And when you understand that it's not to be feared necessarily, it changes life completely. That was one of my favorite ones. And then one of my other favorite ones was the one you actually produced and put together about cultural festivals and the meaning of the cultural festivals. And the personalities were so interesting, and it's like, it's just something that we need so badly at this time because we need to understand more about each other. So I thank you for that great episode.
And Beth, I do want to even share with everyone here, you've had a lot of engagement with the communities. I think I even met you initially at a community event. And so, with the type of work that you're doing here on this show, have you seen anyone from the organizations or even activities you engage from share that they've learned or have started looking at the program after knowing that you're here and you're involved? Because I know you're definitely engaged in Cedar Rapids.
Yeah, and I don't want to step ahead because I know you're going to talk about the direction you want to go in. But that's one of the strengths, I think, of this program. We can bring in, I think, Leon, you brought it up in one of the staff meetings that we had, the idea of bringing the concept and then drawing the people and then drawing the panelists. And so it is an opportunity to bring a lot of people in the community. Everyone has something to offer. And so, it's an important concept. It brings us all together, and I think it's valuable.
Thank you.
Yeah, so just looking back over the last year, quite a few different subjects that I tackled. I think the ones that I think find the most interesting and fulfilling is the ones where I bring in different panelists from the community here. I'm thinking particularly of one where we were talking about rethinking our prison system in Iowa, and I was able to bring on the director of our prisons at the time, the administrator of our local jail, and then also a director of a nonprofit that deals with post-incarcerated individuals. And obviously it was nice talking about that and just sharing these ideas with our audience. But what's even more fulfilling is both during and after the show. Oftentimes I'm able to see them exchange ideas and to build a connection and to have it hopefully create kind of some organic ideas and collaboration beyond the show, right? And I think, so for me, that's very, I just find that wonderful, right? To be able to see them come together, generate some ideas, and hopefully go back and make our community a better place. The second thing I think is I personally am attracted to very controversial topics. I mean, I think we don't shy away from those. I mean, just looking here, just quickly, I talked about top of the year, we talked about pornography. and its impact on society, vaping, thinking critically about our news, climate change, marijuana, wealth inequality. I mean, so those are all very can be kind of polarizing topics. And what I like to see is in getting people in from across the spectrum, different views on that. I think of the climate change is one that was particularly interesting, as we had, I would say, a couple very strong advocates for addressing climate change, probably from more a progressive standpoint, but it was interesting to see them speak to somebody that maybe didn't necessarily hold that view or quite the view that they held, and for them to kind of have this very respectful, passionate discussion, right? Where we can see people that are great people, good people, that do wonderful things in the community and for this world come together and just respectfully have a conversation and maybe have a greater appreciation for their viewpoints. So for me, that's very satisfying. So, yeah.
And thinking of those, and I'm just doing a follow-up here as I'm listening to the conversations, because this is my first 6 months here, and I came on the show a couple of times, and getting to learn about the workings of the show has been pretty incredible. And so I'm going to want to follow up with a question about those types of controversial situations or those courageous discussions. How do you maintain a sense of civility and also dignity with individuals that are engaged in those tough topics?
Yeah. Well, so certainly I try to set the expectation, prior to a lot of the shows that I do either produce or help produce. And so I always try to communicate with them, what the show's about. So we tried, it's ethical perspectives, not ethical perspective, right? It's trying to get multiple viewpoints and see how that goes. So I always try to set the expectation that that's what's going to happen, right? We're not necessarily, my job here as the moderator is not to come in and drive a particular narrative, right? It's to explore the gray areas, explore the controversy, at least for some topics. Others can be, to Leon's point, more educational. But so I always try to set the expectation. There have been some instances where the panelists have been caught off guard, not realizing that maybe a contrarian viewpoint was going to be presented. And so I've had to kind of deal with that. But I think all in all, it's always gone very well. And I've always tried to express to them both before the show, after the show, and any subsequent communications, how I feel this is such an important show to have, where in such a polarizing time that we live, it's very easy to demonize people because they may hold a particular viewpoint. And of course, we always hear about people living in their bubble and all. So I think this is a way for people to, kind of force them to say, hey, here's the viewpoints. We're talking about it. We're doing it in a respectful way. And I know I'm kind of going on here, so I'll shut up. But there's only been really one time that I felt like it kind of got a little uncivil during the actual episode. But even then, I felt like it was valuable for people to see people respectfully disagreeing, having an animated conversation, but being able to, walk away with it from the conversation with a greater respect for each other. So I think that's a product that we offer to our audience that's extremely valuable in today's time. So.
Well, Thank you very much. Just listening to you kind of describe your pathway and your perspective and how you, kind of manage those issues. One thing I think about, and this is the next question, kind of that growth mindset. And so how do you, as, in 2019 in your role with the, actual programming, what have you've learned or what have you experienced with the programming that has contributed to your personal growth? And is there something in particular that you find that have been, I guess I would say, valuable to your growth and also the growth growth of the viewers if they've expressed that in some way. I know, I'm getting back to the question, but trying to get my thoughts here. But what has contributed to your personal growth and the growth of viewers? That's what I'm trying to say. I apologize for that.
Maybe you want to go first.
Well, so I think that's one area, and I know, LaSheila, you had talked about moving forward with this program and how do we want to make it better and how do we want to evolve. And that is a difficult area that we need to look at. Once again, the collaborations, the meeting new people, the setting new platforms, having new ideas has helped me grow personally. And as we move forward, one thing that I would like to have us incorporate is, how do we extract from the viewers? Because a lot of times I talk to people and they say, well, I saw that show. And I'm like, okay, well, how was it? Is there more? Or what, did it help you in some way? So how do we, as producers or moderators, make sure that our viewers do have the best viewing experience? How do we pull that out? What can we do to make it a better show in that sense? So I'm not answering your question. I'm asking a question because...
That's I think it's a really good point to even ask that question.
Yeah, how do we develop that interest in that, the value for our viewers is how I would say it.
And I would say particularly, have either one of you had any additional growth opportunities, or your viewers, have they expressed that listen to your show, they learned something, or have some key takeaways in the last year?
Well, generally, yeah. I mean, I'm sometimes shocked at the number of people that do watch it, either live on television or on cable or on YouTube where it's published. And, I find that people oftentimes are, they do appreciate the educational aspect of it. I think some of the feedback tends to be, I wish it was longer, right? Because obviously we're dealing with some very heavy topics, and sometimes a half an hour, is just enough to kind of scratch the surface. So I mean, I think we're thinking of different ways there, because I think we do. This show's been on the air for 20 years, and it has a good reputation, and so I think the upside, the growth potential is definitely there, especially with podcasting and with the internet, YouTube, and all these other different mediums that people are using to get information out there. So, but yeah, generally I think people are I think sometimes surprised at some of the topics that we do tackle, and how are you able to get these people in the same room to talk about this in a civil way? A lot of times it's one person that you may be interviewing, and then another, but now all of a sudden you have three people that are talking about, abortion, or, but from different sides of the aisle, and yet you're able to have this great conversation. So, yeah, and so for me, the personal growth is definitely getting to meet amazing people. And I often tell people, I said, the more you get to know things and educate yourself, the more you realize how little you know. And especially when you run up against somebody that is an expert in their field, right? I mean, you're just humbled by the knowledge that people have, the experience, the intelligence, and you tend to know when to stop talking, which I think for me is right now.
Well, I want to thank you for sharing that. I think that's a good perspective to have, because I think I was the first show I sat in on was the climate change show, and so I was like, wow, I didn't realize how much climate change really impacts us, here on a day-to-day basis, living in Cedar Rapids. And so I was like, I hadn't been thinking about that in a long time, but I've been seeing like public, kind of PR, or, public information, providing that type of context, like, okay, these are issues that we're dealing with, and it's climate change. And I'm thinking, wow, what are we doing now? Like 10, 20 years from now, that's going to impact our quality of life. So that was a good, something I hadn't thought about, but that is, a good way that viewers, if they're just like the average person, can kind of get in their develop a growth mindset regarding quality of life, specifically to environmental issues. I found that one to be particularly personally. I don't want to take over the show here, but I just that's what I found to be pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if you have any other shows that contribute to your personal growth.
I'd say this. When we pick a topic, and I go and I read and I make some questions, and so I think one of the ways that I've evolved in my work in this show is to think about the show as an opportunity to introduce some very interesting and engaged members of our community to our audience. It's not just about talking about that night's theme. And when we invite guests too, I want our audience to appreciate it's hard to find people sometimes. And sometimes we find people who are reluctant to appear on television. And I try to reassure them that you don't have to be the top expert in the field to make a contribution here. We are looking to share with our audience here in Eastern Iowa knowledge of our neighbors who are concerned, who are thinking. They might not be the top expert, but they're still able to contribute to a productive discussion like this.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, when you do this week after week, you really start to realize how many amazing individuals we live just right next to. And all of these people are working together collectively to run this state, to make this state great, and to make it greater than it ever was. They're solving problems, they're educating our children, they're powering our homes. It really gives you kind of a great kind of bird's eye view of what, of the type of individuals that we need in this state and currently have, right, to make it what it is. And it just doesn't happen on accident, right? It's people getting up day in and day out, bettering themselves, educating themselves, solving problems while having to deal with, just the day-to-day stressors of life. And so anyways, I think for me it's a pretty awesome thing to meet these kind of people and know that our Iowa has the privilege of having, and of course we have these great universities nearby, right? We have the Coe College, Mount Mercy, we have the University of Iowa, Northern Iowa, all of these we pull from Kirkwood, and we constantly pull from that, and just to be able to see the great work they're doing, and it's pretty awesome. So, and to the last episode that I did was 2 weeks ago on revitalizing Iowa's small communities. Shortly thereafter, that was a great conversation, and I happened to have the CEO of Frontier Co-op on for that one, and that was of course neat to have him, but. I got an email afterwards from the director, a business owner, director of a particular business up in Prairie du Chien, that contacted me, said, "Hey, I saw your show. I thought it was great. I love what you said about certain things. I'd love for you to take the show in this way, but keep up the great work. I'm going to continue. I'm going to start watching it. It's the first time I'd ever tuned in, and so." It's just neat to see, word is getting out, and we have more of an influence than we probably think that we do. And but I still think we can do a lot more. So,
thank you. I'm gonna just kind of I'd like to know your perspective for the new direction, or not the new direction, but the direction of that you'd like to see the show going in the next decade. I mean, it's going to be 2020, and I'd like to get your thoughts about, what would you like to see as maybe some new programming or things that you see as being relevant for the show in 2020?
Well, common topics, things that we deal with every day are always important, but I know in preparation for this program I spoke with Cedric Loftel, one of the founders, and with Teresa, our great executive producer. And they mentioned that the origins of this program were, as I understand it, amongst some ministers, and it broadened out. and their concerns were truly ethical issues. And so as we look forward, as we start to move forward, I think we have to consider, are we moralizing? Are we trying to teach people ethics? Are we, what is our intent? What is our purpose? I think that can provide a guide as we move forward. One of the things that I would be concerned about.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so a couple of things. I mean, I kind of previously mentioned it, and that is, just thinking of different ways that we can, get this the program out to a broader audience, and even specifically a younger audience, right? I think is great, and one of those ways I think we've talked about it is having younger panelists on, right? People, and I'm talking about young kids, even teenagers, and getting that younger perspective and having them kind of share the program with their social network, and I think that would be a great addition, and something we've been working on, but I'd like to see more of it. And then a nice balance, to your point, a nice balance between those things that really maybe do have a kind of an ethical or moral dimension to it, kind of balancing that with educational programming and highlighting individuals in our community and the good work that they're doing. And then on top of that, making sure that we're kind of balancing local issues with national issues. But I think also people do like, and this is sometimes the feedback, they like the fact that we aren't afraid to tackle very controversial issues, right? And sometimes people tune in and it's like, okay, we're going to talk about this, and it may be more educational. It's like, well, that's boring. I want something that's really kind of juicy and controversial. I want to see them. People are kind of used to some of that, right? They like to that intrigues them. So I think not losing that, right, I think would be very important, and figuring out a way how we can continue to make that even better. So.
And I'm going to just kind of wrap up here with Leon. If there's something that you think we should focus on in 2020, or you have any thoughts about maybe particular topics, and if you can do it,
hurry up, Leon. You got 10 seconds.
So as I say, I've done some of these educational issues. I've done some on the mental health challenges faced particularly by young people. I'd like to do more of the topics with national scope. I've been a little shy about taking those on. I started last year with one on how are we going to pay for Social Security and Medicare. I'd like to revisit some of those big issues.
Well, I want to thank everyone for serving on the panel and providing some really great information to our viewers and possibly future viewers for the new decade. And so I want to thank you all as well for tuning in. This is the wrap up for 2019, and we are so glad that you've taken a look at the program, and we hope to see you in 2020.